Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production. Today, we are going to the most extreme of extremes. We are going to see if we can break this snare drum head just with tension and how it sounds along the way. For a lot of us, and definitely for me, when I look at a certain snare drum, I get at least a little bit of a mental image of what it's capable of in terms of sound and where I would tune it optimally, things like that. Throwing all that away today and seeing just how far we can take this drum in the upper direction. We're going to start at a medium tuning in terms of what we normally use this drum for. This is our Pearl Masters. It has die-cast hoops. We're using a UV1 batter, a 300 snare side. Pretty much run-of-the-mill things that we do here all the time, but the question is, just how much tension can this thing tolerate, and are we going to dig the sounds along the way? In order to make sure that all of this is super scientific, we're going to do quarter turns with 2 drum keys at a time on opposing lugs, also so that we don't inadvertently get more tension on any one of the lugs and start to slide the hoop or the head in any direction. This will afford us the likelihood of getting really as high as we can go with perfectly even tension until the head goes. Without further ado, let's hear our starting point. Yay, it sounds like a drum. Now, we're going to start going up in quarter turn increments, starting now. For this example, there's been no change in snare side tension at this point. Still sounding high, a little bit higher, but not super duper high. Feels pretty much the same. We're going to make small incremental changes to the snare side as we go because we are looking for good sounds and not just for tension, but we haven't done anything to that yet. All right, let's get the next one. Now we're starting to get into what I feel like is piccolo range. I did adjust the snare side just a little bit, but other than that, still sounding good. Still feels like something we could use out of this drum. Let's keep going. All right, now things are starting to feel a little bit choked out on the batter head. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. This is more about understanding the feel that we're experiencing. It's still a good sound, it's still a fun sound, but the feel of the drum is starting to change a little bit. All right, one more time. Now things are starting to get real tight, particularly when you don't play rim shots. If you hit in the center, it's starting to shut down a little bit. But in the case of this kind of tuning, this also means articulation in ghost notes and lower things, and also what feels at least like a louder rim shot at the same velocity. So far, we're experiencing good snare response across the board. I haven't made any adjustments to the tension on the wires so far, and really have no complaints at this point. All right, up into the stratosphere we go. We are now officially in the realm of what I think of as a pitch-shifted snare drum sound. This sounds like breakbeats, like beats that have been sped up to go faster and thus have the pitch rise up. Normally, I would think I needed a 10 or a 12-inch drum for this sound, but clearly not. This drum, especially with the die-cast hoops and a thinner head, is killing it. One more time, let's do it. We're really starting to notice now that we are gaining a lot less pitch change for a quarter turn on each of the tension rods here. And that's partly because we're getting so tight that the head is getting actually stretched differently than it was at the beginning of the experiment. That said, the feel is still changing because we are affecting it with tension, and we are starting to lose some of the nylon washers that are around some of the tension rods on this drum. They're actually cracking under this amount of tension, and I can safely say I have never tuned a standard snare drum this high before. Let's go even higher. At this point, we're starting to hear a little bit of cracking when we turn the tension rods. I've definitely, in tuning drums up as high as I needed them to be in the past, cracked and broken the glue around other brands of heads in the past. This is definitely new territory for us using these heads, and the UV1 is holding up great. Actually, nothing is releasing or breaking around it yet, again, other than the nylon washers on a couple of the tension rods. Additionally, at this point, we're starting to get into a marching snare drum sound if we choose to play in that manner, which is a lot closer to the sound of an actual marching snare than either of us was expecting. This is definitely taking me back to school days when I was working on all these rudimental pieces, and I feel like if I'd been tuning my drum this high at the time, perhaps some of the rolls would have been a little bit easier. All of these tensions have been totally usable depending on the genre and the effect that you want to have and what your aesthetic might be. Definitely surprising in terms of a very standard size drum that is also a very standard construction style of drum. All right, let's top it out. With this set of quarter turns on the rods, the pitch basically didn't change at all. The feel didn't change too much, and this is what we call diminishing returns. We could keep going, we could get to the point where we might break the head or maybe even crack the hoop, but at this point, we've lost some of the nylon washers, the sound isn't changing, there's really nowhere left to go, so we're considering this the very top of what's capable here. The goal for today, just to reiterate, is to also get usable sounds. So if we tuned any higher than this and the sound isn't changing, there's really no point in going further. Now that said, at the very height of what this drum is capable of and also what this style of head is capable of, we have not just a usable sound, but a common sound in electronic music. This is absolute drum and bass territory, some jungle grooves, things like that. It sounds like a micro snare, like even those ones that are just one head with wires pressed against it, almost like a little timbali. I had no idea that this drum was capable of this. And again, with the standard fare in terms of setup, heads we normally use, wires we normally use, didn't change anything out. And just goes to show you also that the versatility of a single drum, even one that is fairly standard in construction, is ridiculous. Now to chapter 2. If this is an experiment that you want to get into, there are a few things that we should talk about before you dive in. The first one is the choice of heads. We chose a 10 mil single ply head, coated because we like coated heads. This is fairly stretchy, pretty run of the mill. It's allowing us a pretty wide tuning range. If you use a 2-ply head or a 2-ply with a dot or something thicker than a single ply like this, your results can and will vary. There may be limitations on either end of the tuning spectrum, just like with any drum. So you can't expect that this exact thing is going to happen, but it's still worth the experiment to see the capability of the gear that you're using. Always remember that a head that is of less mass is going to be at a higher pitch at a given tension than one that has more mass. So a thinner head, a single ply head, that's going to do these heights of tuning better than something heavier. We also want to reiterate that for the duration of this experiment, we were using 2 drum keys simultaneously on opposite tuning rods. This is to make sure that we are never putting extra tension on one side of the head and then compensating for that by going across the head or going in a circle, which can go all kinds of crazy directions. Particularly at extreme tensions, we want to make sure that to whatever degree we can, that we are getting even tension on the head at all times for the life of the drum, the hoop, the head, everything. For the snare side, I didn't up it on every single one of these. I actually only adjusted it 3 times across all of the changes that we did to the batter because I didn't hear that I needed to change it. If I started to feel like things were getting choky or I was losing tone, I would give less than a quarter turn to all of the rods on the snare side. Over-tensioning that side of the drum is going to choke the drum out faster than tensioning up the batter side, so just be judicious with adjustments to the snare side. Big PSA at the end. We're operating with a lot of tension here, so depending on, again, the heads, the lugs that your drum might have, the design of your hoops, your results may vary. We do not hold responsibility for anything that happens to your drum should you choose to go as high as you can with the tuning, and make sure that you listen to the drum as you go, because if you hear creaking or cracking, or if one of the lugs starts to feel tighter as you turn the rod than the rest, stop what you're doing, back off. Don't feel like you need to go to extremes just for the sake of it. This is about exploring possibilities, sound, and seeing what your drum is capable of without blowing it up. If you like what you saw today, please follow the link below to the Patreon. It's the best way to help us continue to make these videos. It's a wonderful community there with a lot of extra content from us. Wonderful place to hang out. There's lots of tiers and different possibilities there for you, so please check out the link below and see if there's one that's right for you. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to hear about our new videos. And tell us your high-tension tuning stories. Why did you do it? How did it go? Did you blow your head up? We'd love to know.